Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, everyone. Welcome to Istanbul Muslim Collective in cooperation with Istanbul Youth Academy session on Islamic financing and entrepreneurship. We have a very distinguished guest. Khuram Malik is from the UK. He is a very bright young Muslim, mashallah. He's an entrepreneur, a strategist. He's worked on very different programs. He's been in collaboration with really good startups and companies. He's been featured in media like Al Jazeera, BBC, and other programs. He also has his own company called Stratagem. Inshallah, Khuram will now join us as well with, with his camera on, inshallah, and he'll be delivering today a very special presentation that he's done on Qirad, which is, I guess, like an Islamic understanding and perception and conceptualization of Islam, of financing, sorry. And inshallah, this is going to be a bit of a long presentation maybe, but it's going to be, I believe it's going to be very beneficial. And I hope that everyone benefits from this. And inshallah, by the end, before we'll do a break after the presentation, and then after that we can inshallah take questions and answers, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Khuram. Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me, brother.
It's such a delight to have you here. I've been following Khuram for a very long time now, and mashallah, his content on social media is very eye-opening, is very enlightening, and he follows the financing and economical trends all over the world, and especially in the past year, he's been drawing attention to like the economic and financial changes that have been happening in the world. And alhamdulillah, he thanks, it's really nice of him to actually accept our invitation and be with us here, inshallah. Please, Khuram.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I really appreciate the kind words. I'm not so young anymore. I turned 40 this year, so I'm not that young anymore.
MashaAllah.
But it's very nice of you to invite me. I've actually been desperate. I've been dying to speak about Qirad. Different for a lot of people. So it's nice to have the opportunity to share it with people, and a bunch of either want to be entrepreneurs or people that are entrepreneurs already that are interested in doing things in the halal way, so to speak. So it's good to have an opportunity to do that. In terms of today, I do have a prepared presentation. It's really long, so what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and go through with some speed, because it's 88 pages, which is very scary for a lot of people. So I'm going to try and speed. I have not actually timed myself with the presentation, but what I will try and do is go through it at a reasonable pace. And then I'm more than happy to take question and answers at the end, and answer those. And I can also tell you about some of the other things that I'm working on that are related to Qirad as well. So let me know when is the right time to start. And
please feel free to start, inshallah, with the presentation.
Okay, so so shall I just share my screen? Is that the best way to do this?
Yes, inshallah. Just share your screen. I think that would be the best way to go with it.
Okay, so if you...
I think you should, because I've made you a co-host, but let me know if you can. Okay, that's...
Yeah, so you can see that now, right?
Beautiful, yes.
Okay, I'm just going to reload this because it's causing a little issue. Okay, let's go into this. Okay, so I can't see the chat and things now. So if there's any issues, Brother Muhammad, please just call out to me and
Yes, sure,
I'll
inshallah.
pick up, inshallah.
We're seeing the screen right now. Can
Yeah.
everyone, is there anyone who doesn't see the screen, or is anyone having a problem? If yes, please do, say on the chat so we can, solve it if there's any issue. For
Yeah.
me right now, no, it's all good, they say, I think.
Okay, because I'm gonna
Yeah,
just go full screen now, and then I
sure,
can just
inshallah.
excuse me, just focus on the presentation.
Please.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Okay, so just before I start the presentation, I want to explain why this was put together. The reason I was actually approached by another large group about almost a year ago, actually, about 2 months after the lockdown started all over the world. And they said to me that they were really struggling. They were like 60, 70 entrepreneurs, and they were really struggling to raise finance because they couldn't find any good halal options to raise finance. And they wanted me to speak about a few topics, and I actually ended up putting the outline for the presentation together in like 15 minutes because it was so important to me. I've been wanting to talk about these things for so long. I just put the whole thing together straight away. But then actually the presentation wasn't put together until quite a few months after. I spent a long time actually putting it together because I've been in this world of trying to raise finance now for the last 2 or 3 years actively, and non-actively I've been in it like maybe 10, 15 years. So this is like a lot of 2 or 3 years of concentrated knowledge brought together, and then like 10, 15 years of knowledge around that, which has all been condensed, not even condensed, but it's all been like poured into here. But that's basically how this presentation came together. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself very quickly. Obviously, my name is Khuram Malik. I am a business strategist by day. So I have CEOs and founders that come to me and they say, we have this particular challenge, which can't necessarily be solved by a marketing agency or a normal consultancy or the accountant or anything like that. And they bring unique challenges to me. And then I basically try and act like I'm like a business partner outside of their business that, is an extra thinking cap, a trusted advisor to help them try and figure out the best way forward with that. I wrote a book called $1 Billion Muslim about 4 years ago, almost 5 years now. I really felt very strongly that Muslims should be doing entrepreneurship. They shouldn't be going into 9-to-5 jobs. As much as they can, they should go into entrepreneurship. And so I wrote about the quote unquote Islamic reasons and the spiritual reasons as to why I thought that Muslims should be taking on entrepreneurship en masse as a priority. So I did a lot of conversation about that in the book. But since then, I've met a lot of entrepreneurs that I said, okay, we're very inspired to go into entrepreneurship, but raising capital is still a really difficult thing, which is why we're here today with this. So is everything okay so far? Is the pace and everything fine so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So just a little bit more in terms of my experience and my background. When I was 20 years old, in the year 2000, I had a retail computer business that did just under £1 million in revenue. So that's about $1.5 million. That was before Google, before YouTube, before Facebook, before Twitter, before all of that. And I ended up building 1,000 PCs with my own hands as well over the course of a year. It was a business that I did with my father. So I've had I then went into doing business strategy consulting about, it will be about 6-7 years ago now. So I've mentored over 500 founders and CEOs around the globe on a whole host of stuff. It's mostly been apps, but it's not been only apps. It's been a mixture of things, but mostly apps or tech-related businesses. I have helped some startups raise finance. Combined was it 2 million altogether. I did help a small independent film as well. They were doing a movie. It was some Muslims that came together and they were doing something with an Islamic message. So I helped them as well, just for the sake of learning about, how do you raise finance for film? And I actually ended up discovering that there are actually startups, and the film world and the movie making world is actually very, very similar to the startup world or the business world. So that was very interesting. In terms of my Islamic study, I'm a student of Sheikh Umar Vidilo. He's the foremost premier expert on Qirad. He's an expert on Muamalat, which is all the social and business affairs of, in Islam. And I've been learning from him a lot. And he mentioned Qirad to me quite a long time ago. And then I ended up learning a lot about, I actually went out there and tried to raise finance outside of Qirad and trying to get into the business world of raising money and stuff. And that ended up really teaching me a lot of things. And that's why we're here on this now today, because I've had a lot of, on the ground experience, so to speak. So in terms of what I'm going to go over today, this is just a general kind of outline of the presentation. Obviously riba, because riba is the main thing that's in the way in terms of being able to raise finance in a halal way around the world. The capitalist models of exploitation, effects on the entrepreneur and the economy. I've got some very modern day examples from when the presentation was made a couple of months ago, but in fact, there's probably even more examples this week, so I'll try and bring those into it if I can. The Medina template, how things were operating when Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was with us, and the Sahaba, and then what the modern day solutions are for that today, like how do we bring Medina to today, and then what the positives are, by going around riba and having a halal solution for raising finance, like how does that benefit the entrepreneur, and then also how does it benefit society and the economy as well. Okay, so the main point obviously with raising finance as an entrepreneur is that people want to an entrepreneur, they want to avoid interest, because that has been our general understanding that riba is interest. And the reality is riba is much more than interest. Riba isn't just interest. Interest is it's a small part. It's an important, it is an important part of riba, but it's a small part of it. Riba is much more than that. There's many other areas and models of contracts that are in play that are riba, and we don't know that they're riba. So we have to actually understand the definition of riba. We have to understand what riba actually is. So that allows us to then understand the problem better. Then it allows us to come up with a solution better as well. And because we've been understanding riba as interest and it hasn't told us the full problem, we then haven't been able to come up with full solutions as a result of that. So as I said, riba is much more than just interest. It's not just interest. The literal definition, we have some Arabic speakers with us today. I believe you speak Arabic, right, Brother Muhammad?
Yes, I do. But there are many native speakers here who I think would be, maybe if someone wants to try to explain what riba actually means as a word.
Okay, well, we can come back to that at the end as well. But I mean, in terms of what I've been taught, that riba, the literal translation of riba means excess. So, you can't just say interest is excess, because excess can mean a lot of things. But also, another way to look at this is exploitation, because that's what usury is. And if we look at all of the examples of where Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has forbidden certain contracts, those contracts are exploitative, right? One party overwhelmingly benefits over the other party. It exploits one party in that over the other. And that's really what riba is. That's the understanding that I'm doing this with today. So it's about basically understanding how exploitation has been taking place so far. So as I said, just to reiterate, when one party overwhelmingly benefits over the other by exploiting the other party, this is riba. And interest in the grand scheme of things is that, believe it or not, this is gonna sound quite controversial, but as we go along this presentation, I'll hopefully prove it to you. But in the grand scheme of things, interest is actually the least dangerous part of riba. There are other aspects of riba that are a lot more dangerous than interest in itself. And a lot of the so-called Islamic solutions that we've been given today, they're just focusing on getting rid of interest, but they don't really focus on getting rid of the other aspects of riba, and then they end up becoming exploitative in their own way. So they're actually still pushing riba, unfortunately. Whether they know that or don't know that is a separate question, but it's actually still riba, unfortunately. So I mean, I've said that now already. So riba is this concealed instrument. The means that are being used, the means that are being offered at the moment that allow entrepreneurs or allow people to raise finance, the riba in that is concealed. So it's not immediately obvious. It looks like a very straightforward offer. It looks like a really straightforward contract. And there doesn't look like there's anything there that is exploiting the individual. It seems like, now that especially that I've been in the venture capital world, it seems like, okay, people, a venture capitalist here is giving us free money. They're doing us a favor. And we should be honored to be given this money and a chance to be able to do business and continue with our life. So that's how the entire world pretty much sees venture capital, but and other finance solutions. And that's how I used to see it as well. But over time, you start to realize actually the exploitation in that is concealed. It's there, but it's concealed. And it's when you enter into that contract and you start actually executing, then you start to realize where the actual exploitation is. And that's what actually creates the wealth inequality, because what happens is you're never able to climb up the ladder. You're not ever able to rise. It just makes you poorer, unfortunately. And the person that's providing the capital gets richer and richer, and the poor just, unfortunately, just get poorer and poorer, unfortunately. So the argument a lot of people have often presented, and it's not quite the argument of my book, but it was kind of the takeaway a lot of people had was that, okay, if we just all go into entrepreneurship and we all make a lot of money, then that will solve the problem of wealth inequality, and the Muslims will be rich, and then they will be able to provide really great solutions for the Ummah, and we won't have any issues and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, that isn't the case, because riba is in so many contracts, it's in so many places, right? It doesn't give the entrepreneur a chance to access the capital, to therefore grow their business and to really scale their businesses up. So those barriers to entry have to be stamped out. Then we can all get into entrepreneurship, and then inshallah we can all rise and all generate wealth to benefit the Ummah, inshallah. Okay, so just to start drilling down a little bit further now, we'll talk about macro and microeconomics. So as I said before, the actual exploitation occurs in the nature of the contract, right? So what happens is when you try to raise finance, you get given the contract, and within there is exploitation. And the effect of it, the net result of that is when you sign that agreement and you agree to adhere to that contract, you lose as the entrepreneur, and society as a whole loses as well, which I'll explain a little bit further on. But we often think that, okay, if somebody's exploited me, I lost. That it only affected me. It actually harms all of society at the same time, which I'll show you in a second, a little bit further on. But and that's something that when I got into this was actually a really big surprise to me as well. It was something that was very new to me, but it's actually quite alarming how harmful it is. So when you fix the contract, when you take the exploitation out of the contract, then what happens is the lose-lose situation disappears. So what happens is the entrepreneur prospers, and the society prospers as well. So you as a result of that, if you have a contract that is what Rasulullah wanted from us, what Allah Ta'ala has ordered, what the Sharia has ordered, then it brings barakah to the business, it brings barakah to the contract. The entrepreneur prospers because the model is designed to prosper, and society prospers as a result of that, right? So this is where you can't just focus on just changing the individual. This is the argument for that. You have to actually change the systems in society as well. And this is one of the biggest arguments for that. Okay, so let's just look at some of the current models of financing. So we've got two models of financing. We have debt-based financing, where you're given a loan by a party of some sort, and then you make repayments on the loan. The other one is equity-based financing, where they take a stake in your business. So just to focus on debt-based financing for now, there's different types. Obviously, there's bank loans. You can get a bank loan to start your business. You can remortgage your house to start a business, so you can get a mortgage, and you can become a property investor and you get mortgages, right? Anything that's got a recurring loan repayment with interest is in debt-based financing. Then obviously they all come with interest, but the most harmful aspect of that isn't just the interest. So this is me getting into this now. It's actually the need for collateral. So any debt-based financing solution that we have, if you go to the bank, and they don't actually make this that clear anymore. They're not that obvious about it anymore because it's actually gotten quite political as well. But if you go to the bank and you ask for money, if I ask the bank for 50,000 euros, 50,000 pounds, $50,000, the bank will say, what assets are you going to put against it? What's the collateral? So I might say, okay, I have this Mercedes, two Mercedes, and I have a van or something. That's the collateral I will give you. The net result of that is, if my business fails, then they seize my assets. They take my collateral. And that's actually not permissible in Islam, and it actually puts the entrepreneur at great risk. The bank isn't taking any risk in that, because they're printing the money. Believe it or not, they print the money out of nothing. So it's like somebody sat there, they write on a piece of paper, they put an IOU on there or something. This is worth this much. They give it to you as an entrepreneur, and you say in return, if I don't make this business successful and give you 2 pieces of paper back, then you can take my house. So all of the risk is from the entrepreneur, and the bank takes no risk. They often pretend that they're taking risk, or that they're at a lot of risk by giving you the money, but it's not really the case. And so all of the risk is for the entrepreneur. So it makes it very stressful for them to run the business. It's a huge barrier to entry. It's always on the back of their mind, so they can't exercise a lot of creativity when they're running the business, because they're always worried about losing their assets and things. People get mental health issues as a result. So many men and women have committed suicide as a result. So many things. It really harms the individual. If I was to say, like in a mental health kind of way, but also cripples them in other ways as well. But also, if you don't have the collateral, if you're already poor, or you've not had a good start in life, then you can't get a loan, because so only the rich can actually go and get a loan because they have the assets, right? And I don't mean to be insulting when I say poor. I count myself and all of us as the poor. If you're the average human being in society, the average Joe, I would say we're all poor, because when I talk about the rich, I'm talking about people that are filthy rich. People have a lot of money. They're able to, if they've got 4, 5, 6 houses, they can put one house up as a collateral and get a loan for, leverage it 5x, 10x, whatever, and get a whole load of money and get on with what they need to do. The average Joe isn't able to do that. So it allows the rich to get richer, and the poor just don't have a fighting chance, unfortunately. So to give you a real, excuse me, to give you a real world example of this actually happens out there. If you haven't heard of the term, there's a term known as the trust fund baby. It can be considered a little bit of an insult these days. And it basically means that you get rich kids, they have a lot of, they're born into wealth, they have a lot of wealth in their family. And what happens is the parents set up a trust fund for the child, right? So the trust fund might have like a couple of 100,000 in there, maybe £500,000 in there. I actually know, I knew of a couple, a girl, her father passed away, and he left her a trust fund which had enough money for her to live on for the rest of her life, enough money for her children to live on for the rest of their lives, and enough money for her children's children to live off for the rest of their lives. So she was covered, she is covered for the next 90 years, the next 3 generations. Now, somebody like her can use that trust fund, go to the bank and provide that as collateral and say, I want to take out an even bigger loan, leveraged loan against this trust fund. This is my collateral, and if I don't repay you back the money, then you can take money out of my trust fund. I can provide that as collateral, right? If I'm a trust fund baby. The ordinary average Joe isn't able to do that, right? That's one thing, one way of doing it. In some cases you can do that. In the other cases, you can use that trust fund to put down a down payment on a property, right? So there's enough money in there, so can't afford to even look at, let alone buy. And I can then go and secure a 100-year mortgage, because the bank knows the money is sat there in the trust fund. They're actually willing to give me a very, very big, long mortgage, and I can then basically go and put that property on rent. And be making a lot of passive income, while everybody, the average Joe is working 40, 50 hours a week and barely able to survive, while I just go and put my trust fund up and use that money to go and buy a property. And I'm making passive income, and I'm just jet setting around the world and having the time of my life, and maybe even giving some courses on how to become a property millionaire. But in terms of the actual numbers, I actually went and actually looked at all of this. This house you see, not this particular one, but a very similar house to this. I actually went to have a look at the actual house on the road that it's on. Today, if you take out a mortgage for £1.5 million, so that's around about $2 million, at the average interest rate of 4%. I mean, the interest rate is lower than that now anyway, but let's just say the average interest rate of 4%. And with a mortgage of, you said to them, I want a mortgage of 150 years, which is not available on the retail market. It's only available when you're able to show you've got that much money. Then your monthly payments are only just under £5,000 a month. Okay, so your mortgage will be £5,000 a month on that house, and it's a £3 million property. But that property hasn't cost you $3 million to buy. You've put down $1.5 million, and you're making £5,000 a month monthly payments, right? Well, the rental income of that, this is from an actual listing. The rental income coming back from that is £12,500 that you will get back on mortgage payments of just under £5,000. So immediately you're making £7,500 a month just by putting some money down, and off you go, right? Where the rest of us have to work 60, 70 hours a week, and we still can't make that kind of money, right? So it's £7,000 of passive income a month a trust fund baby is able to make. This is what the debt financing allows them to do, because they require you to have collateral, and you can go and put that collateral up or go and put a lot of money down. But anybody who doesn't have that collateral or that large chunk of money to throw in the first place, they're not able to go on and make this kind of money. They can only dream of it, unfortunately. So as I said, the need for collateral allows the rich to continue getting richer, while it disadvantages the poor. So now going over onto the interest aspect, how that is dangerous. I'll show you that now as well. So let's look at a less expensive property. So we have here Fadim, right? He buys a property for $150,000, and the average property mortgage now, I mean, in the 80s it used to be like 12 years, but now it's like 25 years. So for the average Joe, average person, the mortgage is 25 years long. Now he will pay back at the current interest rate, he will pay back $220,000 over 25 years. So if he's 30 years old now, by the time he's 55, right, he'll have paid $220,000 back on that mortgage. So what happens as a result of that, Fadim says, I have sold I've spent £220,000 on this house altogether, so I want $220,000 back for this house. And the cycle is exactly the same for Fadim's neighbors, right? So here you go, £150,000 repaying over 25 years at, well, the initial rate is 1.84%, but altogether it's 3.3%. You pay back £220,000, right? This is an actual mortgage calculator from HSBC. This is something that you can get today. So over 25 years, you would pay back £220,000. So what happens is, because Fadim's paid back £220,000 over 25 years, he says to his buyer, I want you to give me £220,000 for this house. And his neighbors go through the same process. They buy a house for £150,000 on the same street, and they pay back, 220K approximately over 25 years. And they also say, I want £220,000 back. So that's what makes the price of the property go up. This is why property prices go up. So the property investor who is relying on property prices to go up, what he's actually doing is relying on Riba to make the property price go up. That's why properties get more and more expensive. Now you will have loads and loads of economists that will argue, oh, it's because of supply, and it's because of demand, and it's because of this economic indicator, and it's because of this, and it's because of that. All of that, fine. But if you get down right to the core of it and just look at the core of exactly what's going on, it's just Riba that's driving the prices of the property up. Because whatever you spend on that property altogether, you're going to want to get that back altogether. Because it's happening for everybody else, the price just starts going up. So Riba is causing property prices to go up, the interest aspect of that, but it's also what the property investor uses That's what he has to rely on in order to be able to turn a profit. And property investors, obviously not just individuals, it's huge construction companies. And so they're heavily reliant on that. They need riba in the country. They need interest in the country so that they can make an investment on property. They can go up in price and then they can sell it at a profit. That's what they need. So they will always make the argument for, they will lobby the government for interest rates and for for riba because they need that. Otherwise, they can't make a profit on their property in this way. They have a huge amount of increase in property prices. So, as a lot of people often have said, real estate is the ultimate business and this is one of the biggest reasons why. So here, just to give you the further stats on that. Now, 1980 is when I was born. I turned 40 last year. And you can see in England, the year I was born, the interest rate was 16%. Okay. And at that time, the average mortgage was between 12 to 20 years. It wasn't quite 25 years. And then you see around the year 2000, the interest rate comes down to about 4%. So you say to yourself, oh, well, the interest rate is lower, so the economy is booming, and we should go out and buy a property, and credit is really cheap and it's really easy to buy a property. Well, the year 2000 is when property prices went through the roof. And the reason why that happened is because the average lifespan of the mortgage is around 20 years at that time. It takes 20 years for that price to mature, because it's going to take you 20 years to pay that mortgage back. And then everybody else in the country is doing the same thing. So collectively, the property price boom is driven by high interest rates. Well, just interest rates altogether is what is driven by. That's what does it. And you can actually go and look, if you actually go and look at the property price indexes, have a look at the property price index from like 1980, then 1985, then 1990, then 1995, and then have a look at it from 2000. It just suddenly skyrockets. It's just like the line just suddenly starts to go through the roof. It just completely changes, and this is the driving factor from that. And this this information is directly from the Bank of England. So that's property prices. It also prohibits the economic prosperity of the consumer in other ways as well. The cost of consumer goods go up. That hurts the entrepreneur again, but it also hurts the consumer as well. And the way that works is the manufacturer takes out a loan to buy some manufacturing equipment, right? Because they're not able to go into business. If you want to start, say for argument's sake, I want to start a manufacturing plant now tomorrow. There's these mushrooms that are medicinal, like reishi mushroom and cordyceps. These are medicinal mushroom that's getting a lot of scientific interest at the moment, right? So alternative medicine suppliers are supplying those and those kind of things. So I'm not talking about psychedelics, by the way, or magic mushrooms. I'm just talking about ordinary mushrooms. There's lots of different varieties. You have they're considered medicinal. They are considered to have medicinal advantages and properties now. And to farm those mushrooms outside of their native climate, you need a lot of manufacturing equipment. You need to hire scientists. You need to have really, really special scientific equipment. You need to have a big warehouse, right? You need all these things. That kind of stuff costs you a couple of $1 million to set something like that up, even though you're providing a very beneficial service to the consumer. So generally, the only choice that you have is you either go to the venture capitalist or you go to the bank and you take out a loan. The distributor does the same thing, right? Like if you're selling those mushrooms wholesale, you'll sell them to a distributor. So the distributor does the same thing. They need to buy the vans, they need to buy the lorries, they need to buy the warehouse storage, they need to buy the logistics equipment. And then what happens as a result of that, everybody that's in that supply chain, the manufacturer, the distributor, they're all paying interest back on the on the loan, obviously, right? So they spend the majority of their profit just servicing that loan, and the net result of that is the cost of goods go up, right? It makes it very difficult for the entrepreneur to start the business because they spend most of their profit on paying the loan back, and the consumer experiences a greater cost of living. This lady, Margaret Kennedy. She actually went and did a study on that from data from Deutsche Bank. And she said that 35 to 40% goods are costing us more than they should be, right? So the average cost of goods is around 35 to 40% more than it should be. So an iPhone, for example, that is costing $1,000 today should actually be costing us maybe $600 or $700. And the reason why it's costing that much money, it's not the only reason, it's not the full argument, but a large part of that reason is because of the interest payments that these companies are paying back to the debtors. And so that cost gets passed on to us as the consumer. And so we're spending a lot of money on stuff, a lot more money on stuff that we shouldn't have to. And so that prohibits us as entrepreneurs as well, because the cost of just starting up in business, everything that, all the equipment and everything that you buy in the, for your business, anything that you spend your money on, and your cost of living just goes up, and that just makes it harder and harder to actually get on the entrepreneurial ladder. Everything okay so far?
Actually, I ask? We were just writing on the chat.
Yeah.
Did you give a definition of riba? You just said exploitation, right? Just so we can follow better.
Riba is the literal translation of that is excess. But what I said was that another way that you can look at it is exploitation.
Okay, and there were 4 elements. You said interest, collateral, and what are the other 2? Can you just remind us?
Okay, let me just go back for you.
I'm sorry about this, but it will help us follow better.
Yeah, fine, don't worry.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so let me just go back. So this is not the this is not the 4 types. This is the actual. This is the entire discussion of the debt-based financing. The different types of loans that you can get are bank loans and mortgages. Basically, anything with a recurring loan repayment, right? So anything that's got interest in there generally will be debt-based financing. And the main issue with debt-based financing, apart from the interest, this is the bit that's the most dangerous aspect of it, not the interest, is the collateral, the need for collateral.
Okay.
Does that make sense now?
Yes, it's much better. Thank you.
Yeah, so what's in red here is what's the most dangerous aspect of it. So you know, we say that, oh, interest is haram, interest is riba, so we shouldn't be paying interest, and that's true and that's correct. But the need for collateral is more dangerous than having to pay interest. So obviously, I'm not legitimizing this. I'm not condoning interest. I'm just saying the collateral aspect of that is more dangerous. And you will find even Islamic banks ask for collateral as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's how you recognize the danger of it. That okay?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So I think I'm realizing I probably need to slow down a little bit. I just wanted to make sure I could get to the end of the presentation. That was all. Okay, if anything else isn't clear as I'm going along, then feel free to interrupt me on that. But of course, I will take questions at the end anyway. I'll definitely take those because I know a lot of this is very new anyway. So, okay, so
excuse me.
Yeah.
Just in connection with those slides that you were showing just now, you said that, for example, if someone buys a house at 150K,
yeah,
and then actually he pays 220 in the end, so he's going to ask for it 220.
Yes.
You mean when he sells it? Or,
yeah, when he sells it, because if I buy a house for 150,000, but the mortgage that I've paid back over 25 years is 220,000, I'm going to say that I want to sell this for 220,000. I'm not going to sell it for 150,000 because altogether I paid 220,000 for the house.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I see. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Sorry. Okay, so as I was saying, that the majority of Islamic banks and Islamic lending institutions today, they do require collateral, right? So if you go to an Islamic bank, even if they don't charge you interest, they will still ask for collateral. And as I said, the collateral is the most dangerous part of that, right? So they're unfortunately still replicating a model of exploitation, unfortunately. Whether they're doing that intentionally or unintentionally is a separate conversation, but this is unfortunately what's going on, even with Islamic banks. Okay, so now equity-based financing. Equity-based financing is where the person that is giving you money takes a stake in your business. They take like some sort of partnership in your business, some sort of equity in your business. They are like a silent partner or a proper partner. They have a stake in your business, right? So there's different types of equity-based financing. There's venture capital, there's private equity, there's angel investing, there's even trading on the stock market. So if a company launches, I know GameStop has been in the news a lot this week, but GameStop, for example, when they're issuing shares and you buy those shares, you're actually loaning money to GameStop, and you are taking part ownership in the company of GameStop. You have part ownership with their company, basically. So that's how they get money from you. So that's how money is given in equity-based financing, right? So the financier, he provides the funds. So if I'm a venture capitalist, or I run a private equity firm, or I'm an angel investor, I provide you as an entrepreneur the funds, and then you give me a small percentage of your business in some way. You give me a stake in that business, okay? Now, again, in what here is in red, this is the most dangerous part of this, is that capital is valued more than effort. And what I mean by that is that what happens in these situations is the person providing the money says, well, I put the money into your business, therefore I make all the decisions. I tell you what to do because I gave you the most amount of money. So if I'm running my business and I came up with the idea, let's say I came up with an idea for an app or something, and but I didn't put any money into the app, and a venture capitalist comes to me and he says, okay, I want a 30% stake in your business and I will give you $2 million. Then what happens is he starts telling me what to do. He says, well, I need you to grow. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. You need to get rid of this staff member. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. We've seen a lot of this on Twitter in the last month or two. Twitter is backed by financiers, and they are now telling Twitter what to do, right? They get to tell you what to do. So you don't get to run the business in your own way. And then it starts harming you because maybe you know what's best for your business, what's best for your app. But the venture capitalist, the person providing the funds, they have their own agenda, they have their own motivation, and then they start steering you away. And you feel guilty, you feel responsible to them because they've given you money and you've agreed the contract that you get to have a say in my business. And so you start doing what they say, and that starts to break your business. Or you end up getting forced to do things that you don't want to do. And even if it doesn't break your business, it forces you to do things you don't want to do. So, you look at Uber, for example, the CEO of Uber, let's put in the argument aside as to why they got rid of him, and whether he did what he did, whether that was right or not, or whatever it is that he did. But just looking at the transactional element of the board was able to come together and they were able to get rid of him because they provided the money, so they can just get rid of him. They can throw him out from his own business. The same thing happened to Steve Jobs. The board came along and they said, okay, we don't want you anymore, go away. But he started the business, he put all the effort into that business, and they got rid of him because they can afford to do that, because that's how the contract of equity-based financing works. So they can legally do that, and there was nothing he could do, right? Until obviously afterwards they decided to bring him back and everything. There are other things that happens with that as well, because when you buy when you put money into the business, you buy a stake in the business. And that you effectively get like a piece of paper or something that defines your ownership of that your stake in that business, and you can actually just resell that stake of the business to somebody else. So I can say, for argument's sake, if I give you $2 million, for example, and I get a 30% stake in your business, and then the app starts doing really well, and the app goes to 7 million or 8 million, instead of taking the profit from you, I can take that stake, the piece of paper, the certificate, or those shares. I can go to somebody else, and I can say, this business is doing 7 million now. It went from 2 million to 7 million, but it's going to go to 20 million or 30 million. So I will sell you my stake in the business. You give me 5 million or 10 million, and then they just sell it away, right? They sell that stake away. So now me, as the person that financed you, I make a whole load of money, right? I make a huge amount of money. You think, wow, it's a really good way of making money. But what happens is all the people that are inside that business, who are putting all the effort in that business, they don't get a say in the matter. So you make all of this money as the financier, and they get shortchanged. You make the profit, and they get they don't make they just continue doing the effort. They don't get a chance to make any of the decisions. They get shortchanged. They get told, well, we can't give you more salary. We can't give you an increase in salary this year. Sorry, times are really hard. The market conditions are difficult. You didn't work hard enough. This happened, that happened. And they don't get any benefit, because the guy who had the stake in your business, he's making all the money, and he's not even doing the work. You're doing all the work, right? So in Islam, this is not permissible. In Islam, we value effort over capital. Those workers that are inside the business, the person that's running the business, he gets to make all the decisions, or the majority of the decisions, the biggest decisions. He has the final say. And the people that are working in that business with him, they are considered more important than the person that's providing the capital. This is not the model that's being used in the West at the moment, but that's how it's supposed to be in Islam. Does that make sense now so far? If there's anything you want me to just reiterate, I'll do that right now. Anybody?
All good.
Anybody there? Okay. All right, carry on then. Okay. Right. So the other thing is that when you're talking about large amounts of money, if you want to start a new train, a new railroad, or a new train company, like if Virgin wants to launch a new train, which costs like 700 million pounds, or if you want to start a new telephone company, you want to start a new internet company, you want to start a new studio, Hollywood studio, you need a large amount of money for that, hundreds of millions, if not billions. The way that that money comes together is through a system called fractional reserve banking. So I'll explain what fractional reserve banking is in a second, but that money gets pulled from the bank accounts in the fractional reserve banking. It goes to investment banks. So investment banks are like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley and all of these kind of guys. And from there, it then goes to investment firms, like hedge funds, like Melvin Capital that invested in GameStop, for example, right? And then from there it goes to smaller and smaller firms. So there's like a whole chain that this money goes through, and that's how they get the money, and then that's what they use to invest that money into your business. But here's how that money trail actually works. Let's say I have $1,000 in my bank account. Let's say the 40 people in this, 40 or so people in this Zoom class have $1,000 in your bank account each. That's $40,000 amongst all of us, okay, right? And then the bank has what is known as a 9-to-1, for argument's sake, a 9-to-1 fractional reserve ratio. What that means is the $1,000 that I've got in the bank, while I'm not using that money, so if I'm only, if it's just sat there at the moment, the bank will take 900 of that, $900 from my bank account without telling me and without showing it that in my bank account. The reason why it's 900 because it's a 9-to-1 fractional ratio. So 9 parts of 10 or 90% of that is that's what that means. So $900 they will be using, okay? So they use $900 from me, then use $900 from each of you. So $900 by $43,600 they are using for themselves, okay? Until I need that money, then they will give it me back. But this is the reason why if all of us, all 40 of us went to the bank account and all tried to get $1,000 out the same day, they wouldn't be able to give us our money back. And the reason why they're not able to do that, because that money isn't there. They've used it for something else, right? So this is known as the fractional reserve banking system. So probably the maximum amount of money that I can take out at one time would be like $100. This is why you have a limit on your, when you go to the ATM or when you go to the bank and you take out a large amount of money in one go, the bank calls you. They're not calling you just for fraud. They're calling you because they need to use that money for other things. That's why that's the real reason why they're calling you. So this is known as fractional reserve banking. And that money, as I said, goes to the really big investment banks, and then they use that money to give that back to you. So effectively what happens is, when I'm, just to give you another calculation, if Fadim has 100 neighbors and they have $1,000 in their bank each, the bank has $90,000 available then to use as an investment. So they can give that $90,000 to an investment firm. And then Fadim goes to the investment firm and said, look, I have this really amazing app. Let me give you a presentation. Please, 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 please give me money. This app's going to be amazing. I beg you, please, please, please. He wears a shirt and tie, suit and tie and everything. And they give him this, okay, we'll give you the money. We'll give you $90,000 for you to start the app. Well, the issue with that is that they just gave Fadim his money back, right? So he had to beg them for it. And not only did they give Fadim his money back, excuse me, they actually now have a stake in his business, so they get to tell him what to do as well. So that's like how insidious fractional reserve banking is. And again, Islamic banking is also still using fractional reserve banking. So they are pooling your money and using that in other places, unfortunately. All, as far as I'm aware, I did look into this, but you can go and have a look for yourself as well. All the Islamic banks are using fractional reserve banking. So this system is in play over there. So, you know, when we go and ask the bank sorry, the venture capitalists for money, we're actually asking for our money back and our neighbors' money back. But then they get to have a stake in our business at the same time. Okay, so, you know, he's borrowing his own money there effectively. Okay, and as I said, the Islamic banks today are also using the fractional reserve banking system. Is that okay so far? Because that was a little bit of a complicated topic there. So just let me know if that's okay so far.
It was clear.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so continuing on the theme of equity-based financing, the main thing that equity-based financing is always trying to do is extraction. They're trying to funnel the profit upwards. What they're trying to do is extract as much money from the business for themselves and leave nothing for the maybe a little something for the entrepreneur, but nothing for the workers, right? The lady that left eBay and went to Hewlett Packard, Meg Whitman, she did the same thing. Warren Buffett only invests in businesses that do this. All of the case studies that you will see out there, this is exactly what's going on. And in major companies that you know, this is what's going on behind the scenes. And this guy, he's become a lot more famous this week. You will know him, Chamath Palihapitiya, right? He was a former executive at marketing executive at Facebook. He's the one who's been in this war with GameStop this week. He's been getting involved in criticizing the hedge funds and everything. But this is what he said, that the dynamics we've entered is in many ways creating a dangerous high stakes Ponzi scheme, right? Ponzi scheme, like a pyramid scheme. And this whole thing is just, you know, like gambling and all this kind of stuff. That the people that are putting the money into the businesses, right? They're taking money from fees by pooling that money together, and that's how they're making their profit. And then they're destroying the actual business itself in the process because they don't care. They really don't care. Okay, so this is how the funding ladder works. Some of you might know about this. You know, if you try and raise money for your business, if you're trying to raise between $0 to $100,000, you go to an angel investor. If you're trying to raise between 100, this is approximately, it's not definitely, but it's roughly speaking. If you want to raise 100,000 to $1 million, you go for a seed round, you go to a venture capitalist. And then they have different series. They have Series A, Series B, Series C. So you hear about this. You know, Uber raised a Series D, or Twitter raised a Series J, etc., etc. These big companies, they raise funding rounds, and it just all that means is that they receive this amount of money, and that the venture capitalists get a certain percentage stake in their business. And what happens is, if you raise $100,000 for your business now, and the business starts doing better, then the angel investor, he sells his stake to the venture capitalist, the seed investor, and then when your business starts doing a little bit better, he then sells his stake to a larger venture capitalist, and then they sell it to a private equity guy, and then so on, and then eventually you reach the stock exchange. And all along the way, these are the guys that are making the money. The business isn't making any money, and the employees aren't making any money. Uber is still operating on a loss, and the reason why Uber is operating on a loss is because of this funding ladder. This is the reason why it's not making any real money, right? A lot of the businesses that you will know that are out there, the reason why, you know, they're making a lot of revenue, but they're not making any profit, and everybody's like, this doesn't make any sense. Is because of this funding ladder. Because there's this game that's taking place behind the scenes, this casino that's taking place behind the scenes, where all the actual money is taking place and all these decisions being made, and they don't actually care about the business itself. The business is just disconnected. That's exactly what we've been seeing with GameStop this week, right? Shares are being traded, shares are being sold, shares are being shorted, and all this stuff is taking place behind the scenes. In the meantime, GameStop is going bankrupt. But those guys, the Melvin Capital guys, were trying to make money from a declining business, basically. And that's what makes these businesses a lot worth. And this is why the Wall Street bets guys on Reddit have gotten really angry, and why there's been all this fighting and everything, because they finally realized that there's a lot of criminality that's actually taking place. But this is all riba, right? So in some ways, they're not really fighting riba, but you know, they're being alarmed by it now. So as I said, Uber is an example of that. Uber isn't making a profit even now. They've been running since something like 2007. What happens is what the investor will do is they will force the business to grow as fast as possible. Now, ordinarily, you would think that, okay, that's a really good thing if the business grows. What's wrong with the business growing? They will force you to grow the business when it's not always healthy for the business, right? A lot of the times, if you grow too fast, you bring employees that are not right for the business because you haven't figured out what your hiring strategy is, right? You haven't made enough improvements to the product. You're not doing a good job of servicing the customer, etc., etc. You end up spending a lot of money on marketing, and you end up delivering. Sometimes you end up delivering a very a mediocre product. And there's a lot of other problems as well. You end up working the employees really hard and all this kind of stuff. But the reason why they do that, the reason why they force you to do that, is because that allows them to generate a lot of hype. It allows them to generate a lot of buzz. If the reason why Uber is such a big brand now is because everybody's heard about it. Uber's in Malaysia, Uber's in Germany, Uber's in Paris, Uber's in India, Uber's in Pakistan, Uber's everywhere, right? Even though it's not making a profit, because when Uber gets everywhere, when anybody else who was thinking about going into that particular category, starting a taxi firm by using an app, they won't even dream about doing it because the competition is so steep. There's no point. And so Uber will be prepared to make a loss as well at that time. And that's why they're prepared to make a loss, because if you haven't got an investor backing you, then you're just using your own money to back yourself. You can't afford to be making a loss. You can last 6 months on making a loss, 1 year. Uber can keep going for another 5-10 years and keep making a loss. So what happens is that drives everybody else out of business. Everybody else goes bankrupt. Everybody dies. That's how they kill the competition. It's not because they have a superior marketing strategy. It's not because the CEO is a genius. It's not because they have. It's not even because they have Allah on their side. They have Allah's permission. They have Allah's leave. But it's not because they have Him on their side. It's not any of those things. They're not a genius or anything. It's because they make it so difficult for anybody else to get into that business by letting it run at a loss. Now, eventually, when everybody's given up, then it's okay. Now we will find a way to make a profit. Now we will do this. This is exactly what Amazon has been doing. Amazon, as you know, wasn't making a profit for something like I can't remember. It was like 7 years, 8 years, or 9 years. It was only breaking even, and then it started making a profit. And then not because they just wanted to kill all the competition. And then they've been doing other monopoly and shark-like tactics since then. They've been they started raising prices of their fees. If you're an Amazon reseller, they started copying people that were selling something on Amazon. They replicated it because they had more money to be able to do that now. They raised the prices of Amazon Prime and all these kind of things. They just keep raising prices because now they're the only big retailer in town now. Everybody else is dead, right? So now they have a monopoly. They can do what they want. And so this is how the venture capitalists, this is how they create monopolies. They spend and spend and spend and spend, and it allows them to create monopolies. And this is the reason why monopolies are haram as well, because nobody else can earn a living, because you're sucking everything from the marketplace. You're not leaving any air for anybody else to breathe. Amazon is doing that. Google has done it. Netflix has done it. All the big brands, this is what they do. This is how they play this game. Apple is doing it. All of them. Anybody that you think is a good company, is a saintly, they're all doing this. This is why they do it. Walmart is doing it. Right? Walmart will destroy all the small local businesses in the area when they move into a particular town. They'll keep the prices really, really low. They'll make a loss, and then all the small business Papa Joe shops, they all disappear because they can't compete with Walmart. And then when all the shops have disappeared, then Walmart raises the prices. And then you enjoy cheap prices for a while, and then after that you can't afford to shop at Walmart even. So they just destroy society altogether. They just take all the money for themselves. So, I mean, I've described that as a summary anyway, but just to reiterate, this concept of growth at all costs, it creates a black hole, which doesn't leave room for anybody else. It just sucks up everything, right? It creates monopolies, which are not permissible in Islam for good reason. It destroys the labor force because it makes them work really, really hard. And they don't get the benefit from it. They don't get the compensation from that because the stakes are sold off and things like that. But also, it actually makes the cost of doing business very difficult as well, because if I'm on, if I've just developed an app, for example, I develop a new taxi app, for example, and I want to compete with Uber. Uber's got, for all intents and purposes, Uber has an unlimited budget. They can afford to spend $1 million a month advertising on Facebook. I can't afford to do that as an average Joe. So what happens as a result of that is the cost of advertising goes up because they keep spending more and more money, and or anybody else that can afford to spend a lot of money, the price of the ads goes up. So where it used to cost 5 cents a click to run an ad on Facebook 10 years ago, now it costs $5 a click, $10 a click, $20 a click, because these really big players who've got huge budgets backing them, they come and they can afford to spend more money, so they bid higher and higher. So the average Joe, he just can't afford to do that. So he can't compete. So the cost of running ads on Facebook, for example, isn't purely just Facebook's fault. I mean, they've created a model that does that, but it's also the fault of Uber and everybody else that has. It's the fault of it's the venture capitalists that is driving that behavior. So the other thing with the equity-based financing is that they do this thing called ring fencing, right? So going back to the Uber example, in 2007, I actually heard about Uber. I can't remember if it's 2007 or 2009 or 2011, but whenever Uber first came out really early on, I actually heard about Uber before it kind of got to the mainstream, before it got to the masses. And before I realized, this is all riba and all these kind of things, I really wanted to consider investing in Uber because I could tell it was going to do really, really well. And what I discovered was I couldn't even invest in it. So you can only take an investment in, you could have only invested in Uber at that time if you had $1 million to show in your investment fund, not even in your bank account. That's a separate story. So if I had $1 million to invest in the fund, even if I only wanted to invest $1,000 or $5,000, I had to be able to show $1 million before I could do that. And the thing is, the average, there's a number of people in terms of the average that probably could scrape together $10,000, and $10,000 invested in Uber in 2009 today is worth more than $2 million. But they wouldn't give me the opportunity to do it. Even if I have the money, they will not give me the opportunity to do it because it's just a boys' club. It's an elite boys' club, so they won't let you get into that because that's where the real money is being made. So they won't even let you get into that game anyway. And again, the money is being made by exploiting the workforce. But what I'm saying is that there's a lot of criminality that takes place in this particular area. And obviously, the Uber drivers, everybody. I mean, I don't know what the case is like in Turkey, but in the UK, everybody knows at least one person that's an Uber driver, and their life is really, really difficult. They work 50 hours, 55 hours, 60 hours, 70 hours a week, driving, struggling to pay rent, struggling to put food on the table for their children and everything. And meanwhile, the people that have invested in Uber, they've walked away with a huge amount of money, and they've never had to get into a taxi a day in their life. They haven't had to do any of the hard work. All the Uber drivers are doing all the hard work, and all the money is going to the big financiers, to the big investors. Okay, so to sum that aspect of that up, equity-based financing, it means that the founder is effectively an outsourced employee. So when the venture capitalist, he gives me money, even though I call myself an entrepreneur, I'm not really I'm just really an employee for him, because he's giving me the money. He's going to basically force me to do whatever he wants, and that's not the case for Islam. If I founded the business, I get to call the shots. I get to decide how things are going to go. So just to give you another retail example, this happens with the pension funds as well. So if your grandma, she has a pension, all the people that have pension in the country, the pension fund, all of that money in the pension funds gets aggregated and then it gets invested. This is how private equity firms work. And then they will invest that in a retail firm, for example, and then the retail firm will spend most of the time trying to pay back the private equity firm. So they have to raise the price of so if it's like a clothes retailer, for example, they'll have to raise the price of the clothes. They won't increase the salary of their staff. They will get rid of staff. So you've got single mothers who've got children and they need the job and they get told to go home. We can't afford to run you anymore. And then eventually the business gets destroyed because the business can't cope because it just spends most of the time just paying back the private equity firm. And this is basically the cycle of how it works, which, you know, but I'll send you the guys the PDF at the end, and then you can study this bit a little bit more in detail, inshallah. There's a bank in the UK called RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, and they actually did this. They bankrupted 16,000 businesses this way. They would give them money. They would provide them loan terms, and they would say you can give us money back in 10 years. And then within 2 years, they would say, oh, market conditions have changed. We can't wait 10 years for you to give us the money back. Give us the money back in 2 years instead. Give us the money back now. And then the retailer will say, well, we can't afford to do that. We'll have to get rid of employees, and that will reduce the quality of our business, and we'll have to raise the prices, and that will make it difficult for us to sell the product. And then they'll say, well, we don't care. And if you don't comply to our terms, then we will assign you a business manager. So he gets given a stake in the business, and then he decides what to do in the business. And he just starts stripping the business of assets. He just starts selling things, and he just starts destroying the business completely. And the business goes bankrupt. And the business manager, he gets the assets and he sells those and makes a load of money. And he sells those assets to his friends, and he gives the assets to his friends, and they make loads of money. And in the meantime, all of the workforce is crying, right? So. And that's what's actually destroying the businesses, the retail businesses, right? It's not Amazon. Amazon is not destroying the high street. It's not destroying the retail businesses. Private equity that's doing it. That's what's destroying it. It's not because Amazon is this amazing company. The website's not that amazing, or the products are amazing, or they just have an amazing marketing strategy. It's not true. It's because Amazon has had unlimited funds to create a barrier of entry, and the other one is because the private equity firms, they are destroying the businesses, and that's what's actually killing them. This actual case with the Royal Bank of Scotland actually went to court. They did $193 billion of fraud between the year 2000 and 2016 in the UK. It was never reported in the mainstream media, like, you know, to a large extent. And it was a really, really big deal. I mean, I think they just got a slap on the wrist or something, but it was just disgusting how this has been taking place, and this is still happening with other banks, with other private equity firms, and that's what's killing the businesses. It's not Brexit or anything like that. So you'll remember Thomas Cook, right? Thomas Cook collapsed last year, I think it was. No, 2019, right? And the boss got a £47 million payout. There were people there were staff on the plane that were told that you can't come to work tomorrow and you no longer have a job, and they went home crying. And this guy got a £47 million paycheck. Because why? Because he did what the venture capitalists wanted him to do. They just sell off the planes, sell off all the equipment in the company, make money from there, sell off all the stakes, make all of that money, give that all to all of the investors, and the workforce doesn't see any more money, and they don't have a job. That's how it works. You know, and also there was another company that came out this year, and you know you get given stock options when you're inside a business, and they were told that your stock options are no longer valid; they're void and cancelled. So people who are being paid a lower salary, they were given stock options. Okay, we'll give you a lower salary, but we'll give you stock options so that in 5 years' time, the stock of the company will go up, and then you can make a lot of money from there, and that will make you really rich. And then, because some of the market conditions changed, they just said, oh, those stock options are no longer valid. So they just survived on a low salary for like 4 or 5 years, and the stock wasn't worth anything. So always the employee gets really screwed over, unfortunately.
Khuram, I'm really sorry. Someone is asking whether we can give a 5-10 minutes break so we can, digest some of this and then continue. What do you think? Is it okay if we do it now?
Yeah, let's do it now. And then what I can do, because I've still got another 30 pages to go, we can either stop here. It's up to you. We can either stop here and I'll do question and answer right now, when we come back in, say, 5 or 10 minutes. Or I can finish the presentation, but I'm still happy to do a question and answer at the end anyway. It depends on how much energy you guys have got.
Okay, guys. So what do you say? We have two options. We'll see what do you guys say on the chat. So we have two options. We can actually maybe stop here, do a Q&A, and then on the next session we can continue the presentation, and then again a Q&A. Or we can actually, the second part can actually be a finish to the presentation, but we'll have, I think, to leave the Q&A for maybe the next session.
I'm still happy to do the Q&A anyway, if you want me to at the end. It's up to you, but I don't mind. I've got time.
Khuram, how long do you think is left? in your estimation?
In my estimation, about 35 minutes.
Oh, okay. I think we can
I'll go
continue.
faster. That's
No,
why
you don't have to. You don't have to go faster. I think we can continue.
Okay then. So I think what we'll do is let's give a 10 minutes break. Okay, let's give a 10 minutes break. Come back in 10 minutes and finish the presentation and maybe have a small Q&A by the end.
Okay. Do we just leave the Zoom on or do we reconnect?
You can leave it on. You can leave it on as you wish. You can do both.
Okay, I'll just leave it on and I'll just put it to mute.
Tahiri, sorry, I think they're saying let's keep going. Let's not take a break.
I mean, a lot of people are saying. I mean, mashallah, everyone's pretty excited. Yani, you've been doing a great job, but also I see some messages saying like, if we can take a break. So I really don't know what to do.
Oh, maybe they're private messages because I think I was the only one who asked about the break, but I didn't mean I wanted to.
No, there was someone after you as well. But I think it's best for both for the speaker and for us to have a small break. Let's say 10 minutes, inshallah, but not let's not be late. Okay.
So
7 minutes. Let's say 7 minutes. Okay. It's 43. It's 43. Okay. So
I'll come back at 50.
7 minutes. Come back, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah. In 7 minutes, I'll see you.
Yes, inshallah.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Okay. Are we ready? Do you want me to start?
Yes, inshallah, we can start.
Okay. All right, here we go. All right, so we were talking about venture capital, the Muslim-led equity financing firms. So financing venture capital firms that are owned by Muslim people or Islamic VC firms, unfortunately, they're doing the same thing. They're destroying businesses. I don't know whether they know that they're doing it, or they don't know they're doing it, or whether they intend to do that or don't intend to do that. I don't know, but the fact of the matter is that it's causing the businesses to get destroyed instead, and that's really unfortunate. But this is where this really comes into play, and we have to understand this. So all of this, everything that I've been explaining so far, riba, debt-based financing, equity-based financing, all of this, the concept of extraction, everything, all of this is because of capitalism, right? This is the predominant ideology of the well, we say the West, but the Western philosophies in pretty much all the countries around the world now anyway. And that's what capitalism does. It harms the individual and it harms society. You destroy the entrepreneur, you destroy the workforce, and therefore you destroy everybody that depends on that entrepreneur and that workforce as well. That's what capitalism is doing. It just pulls all the money up for itself, and it just doesn't leave anything for the average Joe. And this is the reference from the Quran as well, and this is why riba is so it's such a big sin. It's so dangerous. Those who practice riba will not rise from the grave except as someone driven mad by shaitan's touch. That is because they say trade is the same as riba, but Allah has permitted trade and He has forbidden riba. Allah Ta'ala has permitted us to do entrepreneurship. He's permitted to, us to buy and sell. He's permitted us to do business, but He hasn't permitted us to exploit. He hasn't permitted us to get involved in this kind of stuff. And the fact that it harms society so much is why I think, this is just my personal opinion, a scholar could tell us better, but I think that's why it's such a huge sin, and it's easily overlooked, unfortunately. So capitalism, if you were to summarize capitalism in a nutshell, the underpinning ideology is really, the underwriting ideology is, in order for me to win, you must lose, right? And that's basically what I've demonstrated with the debt-based financing and the equity, especially the equity-based financing, right? And the way that they're creating the monopolies. If I'm going to win, then I can only win if all of you lose. So I'm going to make sure all of you lose, and this is how I'm going to do it. That's basically what capitalism puts into society, and it's also what it teaches the entrepreneurs. A very military kind of approach. You're on a battlefield and you destroy all of your competition, and you only win for yourself. It's not what Islam says. Islam says that you do have competition, but you have collaboration as well. You rise and you make sure everybody else rises with you. Capitalism doesn't say that. And the reason why they do that, the reason why the rich use capitalism is because they want to keep themselves rich. They want to be able to enjoy the resource of the world, the luxury of the world. They want to be able to enjoy the dunya, and also because it gives them power, right? And so they can control, and that comes from having the money. That's what gives them that control. And so, when we're fighting riba, we end up fighting capitalism at the same time. What I'm really saying here is actually to fight capitalism. Capitalism is an ideology which is very, very heavily reliant on riba. Very, very heavily. It's everywhere. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that I don't know how authentic the hadith is, but we've all heard it about how nobody will be safe from the dust of riba. Right, a lot of us have heard this, and this is because of capitalism, and look at what we're dealing with today. So capitalism, as far as I'm concerned, it's a religion. It doesn't refer to itself as a religion, but it is. And the people that are inside this religion, even if, and I'm not saying this to criticize or offend people, but even if they're Muslim, a lot of people are actually capitalists first and they're Muslims second, because they're in this capitalist religion and they don't realize it. And money is a god of capitalism, and the temples are the banks, and that's what they use. That's how they create their power in society. And capitalism itself was based on liberalism, which arose in the 17th century. And liberalism is an ideology that is present in all, even in Muslim countries. It's in Turkey. You have liberalism there in the constitution. It's in Pakistan. It's in India. It's in Saudi Arabia. It's in all the Muslim countries. And on top of that, it uses capitalism as a tool, and it keeps the poor poor, and it makes the rich rich. This is what it does. It's everywhere. So Ibn Khaldun, I know he's not very popular with some, but he's very popular with others. But he did write the Muqaddimah. It was read by Zuckerberg. I think even Zuckerberg understood a few things. But Ibn Khaldun said this several hundred years ago. He said, many people that were born and brought up in luxury, they employ people to perform their tasks. Generally, the rich are too proud, and that's why they keep employees to do their works. That's what venture capitalism is. They have a lot of money and they give it to the entrepreneur, and he goes and does all the hard work, and they make all of the money. And he's just an outsourced employee. And Ibn Khaldun, he said this 500 years ago, right? And we're still reading from those lessons now. Just a little bit more on liberalism there. I'm gonna skip past this for now, which you guys can come back to it. But so obviously you're going to be thinking now, what is the Islamic solution? The Islamic solution, this is not the only solution that deals with the riba, but this is the main one that I'm speaking about today, which is Qirad, right? So this is a method that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used. It's a method that the Sahaba used, and this is the sunnah of how you're supposed to do financing in business for most businesses. There are a couple of other businesses that would be done a little bit differently, but generally speaking, it's Qirad. And Qirad is a type of contract. So, and the contract, the nature of the contract in itself, and now referring back to what I said much earlier, is that the contract itself has a win-win that's implemented in the contract. And because of that win-win, it gets rid of the harms and the ills of the debt-based and equity-based financing in one go, and it allows the individual to prosper, and as a result, it allows the society to prosper as well. That's Qirad. And the biggest, well, there's quite a few big things about Qirad, but the biggest thing with Qirad, right from the forefront, is it does not require collateral. So if I'm using Qirad to invest in a business, that business, they don't need collateral they don't have to put some collateral up with me. So the advantages that creates, that even a 12-year-old, for example, he can go out and get some investment via Qirad, because it so the rich and poor, they have equal access to capital. That's what Qirad does for us. There's also no stake in the business. So if I invest via Qirad into a business, I don't have a stake in that business. So I don't get to call the shots. I don't get to say, well, you must grow at all costs, and you must do this, and you must do that. I don't get to do any of that. The person that's doing the Qirad, he's a free agent. He gets to make the decisions. He obviously he has accountability to me if I'm an investor. So he does have some accountability. You know, I need him not to run away with my money and things like that. But he's a final decision maker, and I don't get to just dangle the control over him. So Qirad has no collateral, and it has no equity stake. So the guy is basically a free agent. So this is just to give you a little backing from the Hadith. Imam Malik said that the recognized and permitted form of Qirad is that a man takes capital from an associate to use, and he does not guarantee it. That's the thing. It's the risk is shared. You know, the investor, he's at risk of losing all of his money. Whereas when the bank gives you money, they're not at risk. When the venture capitalist gives you money, he's kind of, you know, he minimizes his risk in a lot of ways as well. And then he also uses that money to pay for his own expenses in like traveling and those kind of things as well, so that he can actually perform the actual business and do what he actually needs to do. All of that is, you know, it's all referenced in the Hadith. And as I said, it's something that Rasulullah and the Sahaba used to do. So the investment is not made on the business, it's made on the inventory. So what happens is that, you know, if I'm selling 100 soap dispensers, somebody who gives me money, he's giving me money to just buy those soap dispensers, and his ownership, if you will, is of those soap dispensers. He doesn't own me. I'm still a free agent. And if I incur any loss, if the warehouse gets hit by lightning and it wasn't in my control, it's the investor suffers the loss of that. If something along those lines happens, we get hit with a pandemic and I can't do business, the investor suffers the financial loss of that. And as I said, the labor is valued over capital, right? So effort is more valued in this particular in Qirad than capital. And as I said, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to practice this as well. So I'll give you an example of how this works now. This is actually a real world example. Somebody's doing something very similar to this. So you have a Qirad agent, which will be Fadim. We call him Fadim. And what he does is he works out the unit cost of each soap bottle. So he's selling soap bottles, and he works out, okay, the soap bottles, they're going to cost me $5 to make each soap bottle, and I reckon I can sell 100. So I want to go and buy 100 soap bottles. So he finds 10 investors. And they give him, let's say if they're $5 each, for example, they get 10 of them, they give him $50 each. And he goes out and buys 100 units of soap bottles, right? And then once he receives that money, he earmarks each of the soap bottles. He says, okay, these 10 soap bottles belong to Muhammad, these 10 belong to Malik, these 10 belong to Basma, these 10 belong to John, and so on and so on. He earmarks all of them. And as each one of those soap bottles sell, he then delivers the principal sum and the profit back to the particular person who that bottle belonged to. So that it's built around that particular proposal, and that's basically how the Qirad works. And in terms of the numbers, so in this particular example, for example, you got $500 that he spends buying the soap bottles for 100 units, and it costs him $500 to distribute it. Like he pays somebody to deliver those soap bottles. And the storage costs him $100 a month. Now, this is assuming that he sells everything in a month, right? Because just to make the calculations easier. So it costs him $5 per unit to buy these soap bottles altogether. But you've got the distribution cost to add on to that. So it's another $5 per unit distribution cost. And then he's got another $100 a month because it's the first month of sale. So $1 unit cost, right? So altogether, each soap bottle is actually costing him $11 altogether per unit. So he will actually go to the investor and say, I need $11 because for 100 units. So he will raise $1,100 in investment altogether. He has to work these costs out beforehand, or as well as he can. And then he will go and sell that item on say, for example, on Amazon. Let's say he sells the item for $20 because it's a premium product, right? So he's made a profit of $9 per unit. So depending on how many investors there are, let's say there's 3 investors, he gives the investors $3 each back per bottle that he sold because he's made a $9 profit, right? And then he keeps some of the profit for himself. Depends on how much of a stake he wants to declare with them. He can come to an agreement with them. He can say, I'll give you this much per unit, or I will give you a percentage, or however they make an agreement with each other. And then he keeps the remaining profit for himself. He actually keeps a large amount of profit for himself as well. And all the time, they don't get to tell him what to do as well. So this is like the general math of how this would work. And so the advantages of this, as I've said already, it's the ultimate antidote to wealth inequality. It does fight capitalism. It's not the only thing, but it's a large part of it. It does invite barakah into the business as well. You do this way, there's no riba in the business, there's no exploitation, there's no extraction. So it brings barakah into the business. And it's very easy. It can seem a little bit complicated in the beginning. Once you get the hang of it, it's actually very easy. And what it means is even a 12-year-old can invest this way or can trade this way, right? So everybody can get involved in Qirad. You can start with even $10 because it's just made really, really easy. There's no ring fencing, there's no collateral, there's no stake, and there's none of that stuff. It's just very basic and straightforward. So this is an actual real case study. His brother called Neil Gaugam. He's an entrepreneur in Algeria. He sells polypropylene rolls. So he would buy the polypropylene rolls, and then he goes and sells them in France. So he actually raised money. I had a conversation with him, and he was telling me he actually raised money via Qirad and went and sold it and delivered the profit back to his investor. I think his wife invested in him as well. And he went and bought 1 ton of polypropylene material in Algeria. He converted the raw material and packaged it as rolls, and then came up with a per kilogram cost. He shipped that to Marseille in France. And then as he sold each unit of length, he gave the money back to the investor. And he did really well with it, mashallah. It worked out really well for him. He wants to do more. And that was Qirad in action. So total cost of 1 ton of material was 3,000 euros. So it was 3 euros per kilogram it cost him, and he made 8 euros per kilogram in sales. So the investor received 5 euros per kilogram back. So, you know, if they've invested 3 euros per kilogram as an investment, they made a 2 euro profit back immediately, right? So it's 40% share. You know, it's a nice little jump on the profit back. So she made altogether on a 3,000 euro investment, she made a 2,000 euro gain on her original investment, right? That's via Qirad.
In how long? Sorry.
Well, I mean, however long it takes him to go and sell those goods. But let's say he does that in a week. She makes 2,000 euros in a week. If he can get that done in a week, excuse me, then he can, you know, she's made that much money in a week. And actually, I'm going to talk about that, the time factor of that in a second. That'll make sense in a second. And Neil, he generates 3,000 euros of income, because I mean, I haven't gone into the numbers because I'm trying to get some speed on this. But when you go and restudy the presentation, you'll see I've done an actual break. You'll see the actual breakdown. But he makes 3,000 euros of income as well. So Linda takes home 2,000 euros and he takes home 3,000 euros. And she gets the principal sum back as well. So, you know, it's a decent amount of money as well. So the history of Qirad, as I said, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he would make a proposal to investors in Medina. Then he would go and buy them the goods. He would take them to Syria via caravan. And then he would sell the goods, and the profit that he would make from that, he would buy more goods in Syria. And they would come back to Medina, and he would sell them in Medina. So, and that's how he was a Qirad agent, and that's how he would do it. Andalusia, Qirad was a large part of the reason Andalusia was so economically prosperous. It wasn't the only aspect of it, but if you consider the four corners of a table, the four legs, one of those legs was Qirad, the other was public markets. And then there were, there was dinar and dirham, and then I can't remember what the fourth element was. There was something.
Endowments, maybe?
Sorry?
Endowments or qaf, maybe?
Sorry, it was guilds. Actually, it was guilds. It was a large part of that. But these like the four. The guild, the endowments is like part of the guild thing as well. But yes, you're right. The Italian Renaissance in the 15th century. This doesn't get covered in history class, unfortunately, because it's revisionist history. But the Italian Renaissance, Qirad was a big part of what made Florence a flourishing city. So Qirad was a big part of that until the capitalists came along. So this is Sheikh Umar Vadilo, and he says when Qirad is in full flow, it will outclass. This is his belief, his theory, that when Qirad is in full flow, it will outclass any investment on the stock exchange. This is the most profitable form of investment by far. It just hasn't been proven yet. In modern times, it hasn't been proven. But this is something that he said to me when we had a conversation, that Qirad will outdo the stock exchange like no one's business when you get it into full flow. And the reason why it will outclass, the largest reason why it will outclass the stock exchange, and coming back to that in question now, is because of the velocity of profit. And what that means is, if Linda invests in Neil and he goes and sells those goods and he sells them this week, right? The next week she can give him another 3,000 euros, and then he can go and sell those goods and make the profit. And then next week they can do the same thing, and they can just keep doing it every single week. And they make a whole lot of, then because of even if it's a small amount of profit, because it's continuous and very quickly over the year, you make a lot of money. When you take a loan from the bank will give you a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, 20-year term, right? And when you take on venture capital, it's the same thing. It's a 1 or 2 year term. So the velocity of the profit, that conversation doesn't take place until another 2 years. So the velocity of the profit is very, very slow in equity-based financing and debt-based financing. In Qirad, the velocity is very, very quick. So that volume allows you to make a lot of money. And that's why inshallah, it will outclass the stock exchange, right? So to give you a mathematical example, if in a typical case study, even if the investor was to receive a 4% return on their investment in 3 days, and this is very doable with the Qirad investment, you could get your return on investment within 3 days. Then if she continues to reinvest that sum every 3 days through 360 days of the year, then with the math, I've done this mathematical sum here, and hopefully this is correct. That's 480% return on her initial sum and initial principal sum over the year. That's a huge return in 1 year. That's what Qirad can do for you when it's implemented properly. So, but like I said, the 4% is very small. Qirad can actually create much higher returns on investment anyway. So, but what I'm saying is that even with a small return on investment, it will create a huge. It just does amazing. Okay, so coming on to today, the modern day. Unfortunately, there are no official that I'm aware of. I have searched and I have looked. There are no official platforms or institutions that support Qirad that I should do. If you go to the Islamic Bank, they won't do Qirad with you. You go to a VC, they'll not do Qirad with you. There's nobody out there that's actually doing Qirad, unfortunately. And this is a sunnah that we need to revive. There's a huge reward in reviving a sunnah, and you know, and materially, it has a huge amount of benefit as well. So this is the reason why I was so excited to speak about it, because it's not being used and it needs to come back, because there are so many benefits for us. But having said all of that, the blockchain is very, very conducive to Qirad because of the way the blockchain works, because it's a public ledger, and everything is done in the public, and it's done with transparency, and everything is tracked, and things like that. And that will become very conducive to Qirad. So without going into too much detail about blockchain, I know a lot of people still don't know what the blockchain is, but it's just a series of blocks, right, that are connected on a long chain, and the blocks are basically transactional records. So you say, okay, this person, he did this, he bought this item and he sold it, and then that's one transaction. And then you get another block, and it says this person, this item that he bought, he now sold it. And you get all these blocks that are available publicly for everybody to see, right? And then what happens with that is that with Qirad, you can see all the activity of the Qirad agent, the things he's buying, the things he's selling, all the people that are investing in him, where he went and sold that. And so you've got a public, transparent record, and which cannot be deleted, so it can't be defrauded in that way. And so it allows you to see what's going on. So it develops trust, and that, because trust is very, very important in Qirad, and because of that trust, it actually makes it more easier for people to invest in people and things like that. So the blockchain is very, very good for that. And it gets rid of trust brokers, so you don't have to use you don't have to have a third party that kind of gets involved in that transaction with you. So you're not then you're not at mercy to them. You're not at mercy to Amazon or Uber or any of these third parties, and you can have a direct relationship with the person that you're doing the Qirad with, without somebody kind of being an intermediary in terms of that transaction. So right, we're coming right near the end now. I have rushed this. But you know, obviously there will be the Q&A as well. The blockchain has something called smart contracts, and smart contracts. If I don't know what kind of ages people are in this in the audience today, but if you're aware of how telephones used to work, like 50, 60 years ago, you know, when you wanted to make a phone call, you would make you'd pick the phone up, and you would say to you'd have an operator at the other end. It would be an actual person, and you'd say to them, I want to speak to the XYZ person, and they would connect the call for you. They'd do a series of move a series of Ys, and they would connect the call, and you get connected to the other person. And that's how you would then have the conversation. That eventually got automated via electronics, and then eventually got automated by software. So then you didn't have the need for an actual person to execute all of that for you. Now, a similar thing is now coming to the area of law, to the area of contracts, where instead of having a person who manages the contract for you, he says, okay, you give this money to this person, and I'm the witness to this contract, and then you do this, and then you do that, and this money is going to go here, and he's gone and done this, and I'll give you the money back, right? Instead of having a person do that for you, you can have a piece of software that does it. You predefine all the rules of the contract in the software, and then you tell it the parameters of how it needs to behave, and then it sits on the blockchain, and then it implements that contract, it executes that contract, and you don't need an individual to do that for you. So that makes, and because Qirad is an actual contract, it means that you can actually get the rules of Qirad, the fiqh of Qirad, and you can put all of that into the smart contract. So then somebody doesn't necessarily have to understand Qirad to be able to do Qirad. They can, because they've got the smart contract that understands what it needs to do. You just follow what it's telling you to do, and you put your money in if you're investing, or you ask for money if you need a proposal, and it will run that whole thing for you. And so you don't have to understand the fiqh of Qirad. It will do it for you. So it allows a lot of people to get involved in Qirad without them having to know exactly how it works. And then by the doing and following the contract, they will eventually learn it anyway, because learning is always done by doing anyway. So smart contracts are a really, really good idea for Qirad. The blockchain is a very good idea for Qirad right now. And so you also have DApps, which are decentralized apps. These are apps that are not inside app stores. So rather than you having an app store for Apple, where Apple controls what's going on in the app, you have an app that sits on the blockchain that the customer interfaces with directly. And so you could put an app together for Qirad that covers, that helps a Qirad agent put a proposal together and invite investors, and it helps investors invest in the Qirad agent. All of that could be done on the blockchain. It's very, very conducive to that. So that's just thinking about the future, basically. So these are kind of the possibilities of the Qirad app. Now, since I did this presentation, I've myself started developing the smart contract for Qirad. So if there's anybody out there in the audience that wants to learn about smart contracts, that has a little bit of, you need to have a little bit of a programming background, or that already knows about smart contracts or knows about DAML, which is the programming language that I'm using for smart contracts, then please do reach out to me. My email address is on the end of this presentation, because I need all the help I can get to build this app that, inshallah, that everybody inshallah can use to actually run Qirad. So I started developing that about 10 days ago, and inshallah, over time, inshallah, I'll get that finished, and everybody can inshallah enjoy Qirad. And that's it. So just the end of the presentation was just me inviting you to if you want to get involved in helping me put that together. And then just a summary at the end of the presentation. Again, just to reiterate, Riba is not just interest. It's excess, it's exploitation. It's used as a concealed instrument to make the rich richer and the poor poorer. The capitalist financial instruments, they value capital over labor, but in Islam, labor is valued over capital. And in terms of the future, blockchain is a very, very good idea for Qirad. And once you see once you download the presentation, I put all the references of where I got all of this information from, or the majority of this information, if you want to have further reading and references on that. And that's the end of the presentation.
Barakallahu feek, Jazakallahu khairan. This was like a very intense, but also very eye-opening, I would say. A lot of people are also like saying on the chat, also in our Telegram group, that this has been like a really different and completely new understanding of how finances and how entrepreneurship works. I know that a lot of people here, at least I know people like Martin and Ibrahim here, for example, are already like trying to look for ways into entrepreneurship, and there's other people I'm sure that are very enthusiastic about leaving the 9-to-5 job world and trying to actually work for your own self. If you have a bit of time, I think we can use up to like 10-15 minutes.
I'm happy to do you another 45 minutes, because it was a lot.
This guys, and this has been a blessing for us, mashallah. Inshallah, we'll do a couple more sessions, and then I'm sure you guys all have like idea that you would want to like consult, and then questions on different things. As I said, Khuram shares really original content on social media, so you can check his social media as well, and maybe like try to draw some questions from there, and both from the presentation.
I've exceeded my friends list on Facebook, by the way, so you'll have to just follow me instead. I'm sorry about that. I can't add any more friends anymore.
Yeah, so you can follow him. He has a webpage as well, which I shared already on the Telegram group, so you can follow him through there as well, inshallah. I think I'll take questions. Ibrahim was the first one to actually raise a hand, so I think I'll let Ibrahim ask the first question.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, brother, and Jazakumullah khairan for the lecture. It's really eyes-opening, and I learned a lot today. My first question is for for the investors who are investing on the free agents, what should be their guarantee? Because what if they go in? What if they go lost? Like the business go, you know, bad. Like, what would be their guarantee?
Okay, so the Qirad agent, he has to have guarantors actually. So I'm still learning about the detail of the fiqh, and I'll get more of that information back for you soon. But so if I'm a Qirad agent, I have two, like one person, two people, three other people, four other people that are my guarantors. So if I run away, they have to give the principal sum back to the investor if I run away. If the business loses money, that's different. If I go and try to sell the product and the market conditions have changed or some disaster has happened, that's a different situation, in which case the investor loses his money because that was a shared, you know, it's a risk. But if I run away with the money, then the guarantor, he says that he will give you your money back. So obviously the guarantor is not going to guarantee somebody, if he knows he's at risk that he has to give somebody the money back, he's going to be very careful about giving the guarantee for the Qirad agent. And if he messes about, then they'll never give him a guarantee ever again. So this Qirad is all centered around trust, basically.
So meaning that if the business gone bad, if the investor loses money, you also lose your efforts, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So my second question is, for instance, like the property here, like if I'm an agent now, there's a property in Istanbul, and somebody from Australia is coming to buy property, right?
Yeah.
So probably they sell the property for about $200,000. So because I'm an agent, I inflate it to around $250,000. Is that money allowed? Because I didn't buy the property. I'm just someone. I was just opportune to know that the price is cheaper. Then I tell the person higher price without having the property personally.
No. So what you would do is you would hire an investor. You'd get an investor to give you the money to buy the property, and then you can sell it for a higher price. So you don't raise the price to the investor there, because the investor, he's helping you buy the thing to then go and sell it. But you have to have possession of the item. So when he gives the money, you got to go and get the possession of the item.
But there's nothing bad if you have like a commission, like, okay, I'm taking it to buy this property, then I'm taking it for any amount you buy the property, I'm taking 10% of what you buy.
Yeah, you obviously, because you're putting the effort in, you're taking the profit. So if let's say I invest in you and you sell it to a guy in Australia, for example, I give you £200,000 to buy the property, then you sell it for £250,000 to the Australian guy. You can take home $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 dollars from that and give me $20,000. We can have an agreement of how much profit you're going to get and how much I'm going to get, but you get to make the majority decision about what that is going to look like. As a Qirad agent, you give me an offer. You offer to me, look, I'm going to buy this property for $200,000. I'm going to sell it for $250,000. I'll give you $10,000 profit. I'm going to keep the 40 for myself, and then I can agree or not agree. I can accept or not accept.
Okay. That's
okay.
great. Let's
I want to have the last question, but
no, save it. David, let's give everyone some space. We'll have another session, so don't worry. Keep your questions, please. Elif, please go on.
My mic was off. First of all,
oh, what happened?
Your microphone is still off, Elif.
Sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hi. Okay. I was saying thank you so much for putting this presentation together and sharing it with us. I have some burning questions about the Qirad, but before getting into that, I want to have a better understanding of the concept of Riba. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm not an Arabic speaker, so I'm not getting the exact meaning of the word, but I have this question. So when you were discussing about the effort problem of how the investors who do the equity-based financing, and that they have a say in the business. I mean, they call the shots. You use the word, and that's riba, and that's not permissible in Islam. But what about, I don't know if anyone else had this question in their minds too, but what about me, the average Joe, buying a stock from, let's say, Tesla? How is this not riba? I mean, when you were talking about Qirad, you mentioned the importance of like putting the money directly to buy the inventory, but how do I know if my money goes to buy inventory for Tesla, or how do I know I'm not filling up the pockets of the initial investors?
Well, this is exactly it. If you've seen what's been going on with GameStop this week, one of the things that happened with GameStop this week is that the hedge fund, the GameStop actually issued 70, I think the number was 70 million shares, right? But the amount of shares that were actually sold were 100 million shares. So there are 30 million shares that are out there that are fake shares. So you could buy some shares in GameStop today and they might not be real. So they're already manipulating you already. And also you will have heard this so many times, oh, shareholder value, that the business is always focusing on what the shareholders want and not focusing on what the employees in that business are doing and the effort that they're putting in, right? So the prohibition, the effort thing in terms of the riba is just the exploitation, but the Islamic ruling is that the effort has to be valued over the capital, right? But if you're an investor in Tesla, because you're providing the capital, Tesla will pay more attention to you as a shareholder than the people working inside of Tesla. That's one thing. And secondly, because this is all a paper game, right? The money they're not using, they could use the money that you give them. They could use that money to say, well, we got all of this investment, and their stock price goes up, and then they just sell that stock for a profit, and you just get the money back from profit from the stock, as in the stock price, the share price. But it's got nothing. They haven't used that money for anything inside of their business. The two are completely disconnected. So that's how that's how a lot of the corruption takes place.
So we never know what happens.
No, the whole thing is just a casino, basically.
Okay, inshallah. Martin, I think it's your turn. You can go on with your question. Elif, I think you didn't. I think you didn't have any question, but if you did, please save it for the next session, inshallah. So we want to give everyone a fair bit of time. Jazakallah. Cool. Martin, please go on.
Thank you. And thanks a lot for the very intense and interesting presentation. Well, I have quite a bit of experience actually with entrepreneurship. In the past, we raised the seed round and Series A round with a previous company of mine, but now I'm working with on a new startup. And actually, I was just today speaking with my lawyer about how to sort out things with my partners so that basically I can have freedom to do to run my business, and my partners can get dividends without actually this preventing me from taking actions. But I mean, since this is like a legal entity by Bulgarian law, and we are bound by the Bulgarian law. Actually, my first question is, if we have like a smart contract, then how can this thing be bridged to the existing kind of structure within like a state and the law that, I mean, currently the law protects?
I mean, that's probably a longer conversation, but as you know, the law it doesn't necessarily prohibit different new business models. It never prohibit that. So just, you know, when crowdfunding came along, or when was crowdfunding, microfinancing, all of these things came along, there were new business models. They didn't prohibit that. They do, like, you know, wherever money is concerned, you know, you have like financial service authorities in each country, especially European countries. They just want to make sure that people are not being defrauded. And they want, I mean, there are other political aspects to it, which is, you know, beyond the scope of today, but they, generally speaking, what they say is that they just want to make sure people are not being defrauded. So as long as, you know, as long as you're receiving the investment and you're not hurting the investor, and as long as he's receiving something back, and as long as you are open with the investor about the money, and, you know, as long as you're doing business, I don't think they would have any issue with it. You know, if you say, here's 100 soap bottles that I'm going to sell you. And then, the investor buys that. And then from there, you go and sell them and then give them a markup. It's not really that big a deal. So but you have to step cycle like a lawyer or a venture capitalist. He's not going to understand, potentially will not understand what you're offering him, probably because he doesn't want to. But I don't know, because I mean, when I put the presentation together, I actually had a lot of people that were non-Muslims that actually got very interested in Qirad, because I think, like yourself, they realized how difficult venture capitalism is. So they did actually they are actually expressing interest in that. But I think you can continue it. I mean, with the smart contract that I'm putting together at the moment, I've not faced those challenges just yet, because I'm just working on the business logic. I'm sure I will, and then I'll probably be able to give you a much better answer at that point. But this is kind of my theory at the moment about how it probably would go.
I mean, sorry to jump ahead. It's kind of related to that question. I was going to ask, technically, if it would just be possible to put together a business contract that meets all the conditions of Qirad without necessarily calling it that, without necessarily telling the lawyer all these details, just putting down the conditions, party A agrees to this, party B.
So I've actually put one of those together. I've actually put a one-page legal agreement together, which was given to a business in the UK that they've actually started using. And you could what I did with that was I put all the party A, party B agrees to this, and this, all of this kind of stuff. And then what I said in the guideline at the end, I said, look, you still have to comply with the laws of the country that you're in. So whatever the legal laws of the country, make sure that you add those to the template, and then you go and use this and conduct business with this. And they're actually doing it already. So because it's just another contract. So I can't imagine that they would have an issue with it until their stock exchange starts to get hurt, and then they will have an issue with it.
Okay. Yusuf Geoffrey, I think, maybe wants to ask a question. We can't hear you, Yusuf. Can you check your microphone?
Something.
Try again.
No, I could hear him right now. Just the voice was really low.
Yeah.
Maybe you can type it. You can type
it.
Oh
yeah, I can hear you now. Oh, it's okay. That's
you. No, Yusuf, your voice is not coming. I think your microphone is covered with something. What kind of? Are you using your computer, or are you using like a headphones or something? Okay.
Let's take the next question and let him
type your question, Yusuf. Type your question, because we can't hear you. So type your question and we'll take your question after Rafik. Okay, Rafik, go on, please.
Assalamu alaikum. That's a very nice presentation, and I think very new idea for us, and it's very important for us as a Muslim to understand the question, the idea. I have some inputs and questions. I think, for example, what about the currencies? Is it acceptable for the Bitcoin? So did you think about that? Like, for example, the other ways of putting the like currencies. For example,
well, I mean, the Sunnah really has always been, that the legal the currency that you should be using to conduct business and do trade, it should have been dinar and dirham always. That's what was used in Medina. That's what we're told in the Quran as well. That's the currency that's been mentioned. But in the modern day, you can't actually buy things with gold and silver because of the legal rulings and things like that. So you just, at the moment, you use whatever is available. So what, if you're in Turkey, use lira. If you're in the UK, use pounds, or use US dollars. But eventually, with the view that one day, inshallah, we'll return to using gold and silver as our currency. But obviously, that's a much larger discussion, and it's a separate discussion to this, because it's a huge discussion in its own right. But whatever is available to you at the moment. But that's not, I mean, it's not the ideal solution, definitely not.
Okay, for like it's actually replacing banks in a way. I can say personally, as I understood, replacing banks or the financial institutions, and which are run by capitalist system. So, for example, somebody wants to somebody want to start a business. He has no investment, but he has idea. So in that case, how it will work? Like, or for
So,
example,
okay,
it can be a service business.
Let's say
It will
I
be
want.
complete.
Well, so service businesses are a little bit different to the inventory, because you need to be able to find a path to saying that, look, this is how much it's going to cost per unit to put this thing together, even if it's a service type. Because you could start a consulting business. You could say, well, I need to develop a marketing plan, and I need to do this and this, but then I'll get 2 clients and they will pay me 30K a year, for example. You could potentially still do that on Qirad, because it's still a product that you're selling, right? You can still productize that.
But it depends that business is sure, like business coming to you or not. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So I mean, that's down to the business skill. But the two most important things when you're a Qirad agent and you're doing a proposal is your skill and your reputation. So if you're a person of integrity and honesty, and people can know that and they can see that, then only then they invest in you. And what the mechanisms are for knowing whether a person is trustworthy and honest is, what do other people say about him, what his character is, etc., etc. But then also is the skill level as well. Like, have you done this before? How good are you at it? What is your skill level? And you then make a decision based on, is this person trustworthy, and does this person has the skill, and then off you go from there. But the biggest advantage of the blockchain is that you will actually be able to keep records of that. So, for example, if for example, I'm really honest and I have a lot of integrity, but I'm useless at doing business, even if I know everything about Qirad, but I'm useless at actually selling soap dispensers, then you can see, okay, well, he didn't run off with the money, but he was useless at selling the soap. So then you don't invest in me, then you go and invest in somebody else. That is just the trial and error aspect of that.
Okay, let's take Yusuf, Afzal, Ty the Rock, and then Malik, and then I think we'll have to end it with this because it's becoming a bit late, inshallah. But keep your questions for the next session, inshallah. Please do. Yusuf?
Hello? Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, now we can hear you.
MashaAllah. Yeah, I just wanted to find from Brother Malik, what is the difference between the Qirad and Mudarabah? I know a lot of Islamic finance banks use Mudarabah, though Murabaha is a little bit on the high side. But what's the difference between Mudarabah and Qirad?
Okay, so I've been told, I don't know the actual stuff. I have been told that Qirad is the term that Imam Malik used, so the Maliki school, and that the Hanafis use the term Mudarabah, but they're supposed to be similar. But having said that, the main issue is that it's an incorrect interpretation of what that actually is supposed to be, because the interpretation is the investment takes place and then this happens and then this happens and then it happens like this and this happens, but the banks are not doing that. The banks are doing things like, okay, give us collateral, put collateral against this, then it's not Mudarabah anymore, right? That if the investor loses his money, there's nothing you can do about it. The bank will like, no, I need some guarantee for the investor. If the bank gives you money, for example. So they're not actually, even if Qirad and Mudarabah are the same things, the bank's not actually following the rules of it. That's the actual issue.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Afzal?
Yeah.
No, I think he's answered my question on in terms of what Islamic banks are offering and why it's problematic.
Yes. Okay. Well,
Rock.
Sorry, say that again.
Are you from the UK?
Yes. Well, from the UK, but in Istanbul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Islamic.
Okay, I guess Taiwo the Rock is not available right now. Malik, would you?
I'm available.
Okay.
This is Taiwo.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Yes.
alaikum salam.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I must say that I'm surprised to hear of Qirad from all the little lectures that I've read online. What I've heard about is Mudarabah and the other ones. So this is very surprising, but I like the way the lecturers handle it. I want to ask him about the blockchain technology that he's using and how can one be part of it as a developer. Okay, let me ask my last one. What type of financing are you going to, or contract you are going to recommend for agriculture?
Okay.
Or farming? Yes.
So the smart contract I'm developing is in a language called DAML, which is short for Digital Assets Modeling Language. So that's the language that I'm using. The platform that I'm intending to publish it to will be something provided by the BSN. So the BSN is the Blockchain Service National Blockchain, I can't remember what it's called. Blockchain National Service, I think it's called BNS, which is provided by the Chinese as an infrastructure as a service. Which specific blockchain I will be using at the moment, I'm not sure. Potentially Hyperledger, but I'm not.
What about, are you not looking at Algorand?
Yes, potentially, yes. Or Coda even. I'm not 100% sure just yet. I do need, if you know DAML, I need somebody to help me with DAML because I'm not an expert in DAML. So if you know I think Algorand and DAML are very similar, I think. But if you know DAML, then I could really do with your help in putting the smart contract together. Or if you don't know it, then if you type DAML into Google, you'll find their website. You could, if somebody who's a good programmer can learn DML in a day, probably. Somebody who's not a programmer, somebody like me, it would take a month. Right? That's going very slowly.
Okay.
But it's one thing you have to remember about DML, and this is really, really important, right? General programming languages, JavaScript and C++ and .NET and all of these different programming languages, they're designed to make general applications. Smart contracts are a new paradigm. So if you try to use an existing programming language to develop a smart contract, you can make it work, but it's not. It's not. You're like, you know, it's you're using a frog to climb a tree, right? It's like that kind of a thing, or you're using like a dog to ride a horse kind of thing. It's not the right thing for the job. So you really need to learn languages that are made for smart contracts, and DAML is one of the best ones that you can use. So if you can study it, if you can do a course on it, if you can learn how to use it, it's a very, very good idea. Now, answering the second question about agriculture, obviously it depends specifically on what it is that you're doing, but you probably would need, you know, Qirad. You could get an Qirad investment to buy the land, to buy the equipment, and then, you know, you could have some sort of agreement. You could say, okay, we're going to buy the land for this much. We're going to need this equipment. We're going to hire these people to you know, till the land and all that kind of stuff. And you can work out all of the unit costs of everything, and then you can take the investment. And as you sell the crop or whatever it is, the produce that you're selling, the output, and you can provide a return on that. I'm sure it could be done.
Thanks so much.
Wallah. Is Malik, would you please like to ask your question?
Yes. Thank you so much for this presentation. I will have to listen again, actually, because I need to understand it really well. It's very interesting. Thank you. My question is about, I mean, this seems to have serious fiqhi implications. So when you say banks, Muslim banks are having this harm, I mean, these banks usually have many, like a board of, I don't know what they call it.
Sharia advisors.
Yeah, Sharia advisors. So no one's aware of it? I mean, maybe you should advise or send some, I don't know.
Well, the one thing, I mean, what I would say to you, my Sheikh Umar Vadilo, he has spent more than 25 years going around the world, right, and teaching other scholars about what riba really is, like the actual understanding of riba. He's gone all around the world, like the big names that you know and the small names that you know. And you have to ask him what the response has been, but it's, you know, it's just not been it's not been a great response. I'll be honest with you. It's just, I don't know what to tell you.
So there's not a single bank that applies this?
I looked for one. I don't know of one. My sheikh hasn't told me of one.
Okay.
I don't know of a single bank that actually applies Qirad. I mean, the thing is, the very definition of a bank implies a certain kind of practice. So it's, you know, it's almost like saying, if you say Islamic whiskey, it's an oxymoron. Do you understand? You can't have, there's no way of having an Islamic whiskey. So you can't, a bank by definition is the wrong concept anyway. So you can't have an Islamic version of it.
So what was in place beforehand?
We used to have waqfs, like the brother said, endowments. We would have waqfs, we have guilds. The largest entity that would provide funds in the like especially in the Ottoman Empire. So the Kai tribe in Ertugrul, they had a waqf. You know, these are the guilds. They were a guild. The what's the name? Sheikh Adabali. It's the Ahuran is the guild. It was in the 12th or the 13th century with Osman Bey, right, the founder of the Ottoman Empire, Osman Ghazi. they were big guilds. These are the ones that would have all the funds. They were, because you'd form a guild of all the people that you trust and they're reliable, and they go and do the work and they take the investment, and that's basically how it works. And the guilds were doing all the beneficial stuff for society. There was no concept of banks.
True. So can I just ask that maybe we need to get the guilds back? Maybe we need to talk about that and see that possibility, right?
Yes, I'm not the expert on guilds though. I do know an expert on guilds, but I'm not the expert on guilds. But I can bring somebody that is an expert on guilds to speak about them. I can talk to you about Qirad, public markets. Dinar and dirham I can speak about, but it's a very involved conversation. The BRI and things like that. But if you want to go more detail on BRI, there is that would be my sheikh and a sister that I know, and then guilds would either be the sister or the sheikh, but they know more about those two things than I do. But the thing is that when my sheikh explained Qirad to me, I was actually in the venture capital world, right? And I actually got involved with venture capitalist firms and all these kind of things, and then I saw it on the ground. And what I realized was that, okay, if you just explain Qirad to somebody, they're not necessarily going to understand the dangers of riba, the dangers of debt-based financing and equity-based financing. So I remember having conversations with people that were trying to raise, even Muslims that were trying to raise some money, and I would say to them, oh, look, you can just do Qirad. And they would say, well, why can't I just do equity? It's so simple. With Qirad, you're making it sound very complicated. And I realized, no, I have to explain the whole thing.
Okay, Malik, do you have any thing to add?
Of course, but I always, but I don't want to.
Let me put a link for the presentation in the.
We did.
Okay.
We did. Hey, wallah. Okay. Barakallah feekum. Barakallah to everyone. Jazakallah khairan, Khuram. This was really, really beneficial. MashaAllah. I think we'll be, in touch for the second and third and fourth session. I'm sure these people, they already have a lot of questions and things in mind. So inshallah, we'll keep building on this, inshallah. Thank you everyone for joining. Don't forget, Khuram is also a very well-selling author. His book, The $1 Billion Muslim, is a very, very good book. If you guys are, thinking and trying to, build something, whether in your head or you're trying to build something in the real life, we definitely encourage you to buy his book and maybe learn from, Khuram's reflections and ideas in the book, inshallah. Until the next session, be well, be healthy, inshallah, be the amana of Allah, inshallah, and hopefully to see you again in a week at the same time. Barakallahu feekum, jazakallahu khairan, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Let's save the chat, please.
Yes. Yeah, actually, I would love a transcript of the chat, please. I would love that.
Can we do that? I don't know, is there a way to do that?
Yeah, when you since you're recording, so when you stop, I think it will save automatically. But just in case, I'm saving it too.
It says save chat. Okay, chat saved. Yeah. Okay, chat is in my folder. I'll definitely send the chat.
Okay, thank you.
The chat is here, and the recording is also available, and inshallah will be made available to you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, brother.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair.